This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, friends. Welcome to goonlinetrainings.com. So, we are discussing about SQL Server queries and other stuff, right? So, SQL Server has a language. What is SQL Server? SQL Server is a software, right? So, we have SQL Server. This is a software, right? Oracle is a software, and MySQL is a software. So a lot of RDBMS softwares are available. So let me take Oracle. So in this, we had learned a language, right? So when you learn SQL Server or Oracle, there is a language called SQL. What is the SQL? SQL is a language. So this language is going to give you a couple of commands, DDL commands, DML commands, TCL and DCL, right? So these are the commands that we had learned. So DDL means data definition language and DML means data manipulation language and transaction control language and data control languages. These are the things we had learned already, right? But only with SQL we cannot write complex programming. So what do you mean by complex? You're not aware of that, but slowly we're going to be learning one more advanced programming as part of SQL Server. The program is called as Transact SQL programming, right? So T-SQL. This is Microsoft owned proprietary language. T stands for Transact. Okay, Transact SQL language. This is the Microsoft own language. SQL is invented by IBM guys, right? So if you learn Oracle, you will be able to learn SQL language. So plus you will be learning a new language called PLSQL, Procedural Language SQL. So SQL is invented by IBM. PLSQL is invented by Oracle founders, Oracle company. Clear? Procedural Language SQL. So SQL has a lot of commands, but only DDL, DML, TCL, DCL, that is not sufficient, right? So we need to write complex programming. What do you mean by complex programming? That we're going to be discussing as part of now T-SQL, Transact SQL. So in this, we're going to be learning. If you learn Oracle, you will be able to learn SQL language plus one more language, procedural language SQL. Clear? So what is that the extra thing that you're going to be learning? So this is similar to C language or Java language or .NET language or C Sharp, Python language. So it is equivalent to that. Clear? So SQL has DDL, DML, TCL, and DCL. But when you learn C language, so if anybody knows C language has a lot of beautiful features. Okay. So if you take a C language, this is the first and finest language in this world. Okay, introduced in 1960s by Dr. Dennis Ritchie from Bell Laboratories of America. Clear? So Dennis Ritchie is the founder for this. Okay. Dennis Ritchie was working for Bell Laboratories in America. So he was the guy, inventing this language that time. Bell Laboratories, sorry. Bell Laboratories, labs, not language. Bell Laboratories. Clear? So Bell Labs, he was working. He invented C language. It has a lot many features. Okay, it is invented in 1960, right? So before that, there was a language called A. It is invented in 1940. Then there is a language called B in 1950. These languages had some issues. Then in 1960, and there were a lot of modification to language A, language B, and language C has lot of features. It is introduced in 1960s in America by Bell Labs. Clear? So by Dennis Ritchie. So if you wanted to come into IT industry, if you wanted to come into IT industry, definitely you should know one RDBMS software, that is SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, Teradata, any one RDBMS. Plus, you should learn one language. One language. Language is not so complex. Language is very, very easy, but you should be able to give a try about at least C language. I strongly recommend. Clear? See, C language has many beautiful features, and language is very simple. I am telling you, language is very, very simple, which is not at all complex. The problem, we start in between or middle, and we say programming very, very complex. I cannot understand programming because I'm coming from non-IT background. All of them are bullshits. Clear? Because you people wanted to come to IT industry, learn one RDBMS, learn one language, whether it is a C language or Java language or a Python language, one language you should know. But I strongly recommend at least watch at least 1 month of C language tutorials in YouTube. I strongly recommend to each and every student. C language has a lot of features and very very complex programs you can write. So what is the programming? At least you can understand. What is operating system? You can understand. What is the RAM? You can understand. A lot of basic things. If you wanted to understand, learn at least a C language. Clear? And lot of tutorials are available. Don't browse here and there, just follow one channel and at least learn what is a C and what was the history about the C language, right? So C is very very easy language, very very finest language. It is introduced in 1960s and it has got a lot of features, right? So in this we create first thing, we create variables. We never talk about variables in SQL, right? We never spoke about variables. Okay, we have a lot of if and if and else statements. Then we create lot of loops and we do lot of other things. Okay, we write arrays, right? We write pointers. Okay, we write pointers and we create a structures. Okay, structures, all these are beautiful things and we'll have arrays of pointers, right? Lot of the concepts are available in this, but these are very very complex and pointer to a structure. So all these are very very complicated thing. So all these things are not available as part of your T SQL, as part of PL SQL. So we have a concept called pointers. Okay, so many people I think who are learning SQL, sorry, who are learning C language, everybody will stop at this subject, pointers. This is a very very complicated topic in C language, but at least apart from pointers you should be able to learn the basic things. Okay, the basic things will be here. Variables, okay, and if and else loops. Okay, if and else, and we're going to be using a loops, right? And we have a lot of other concepts, small concept. So we don't have these many things, pointer, structures, arrays. All these things are not part of your PLSQL or as part of your T SQL. So T SQL is a language, but not when you compare with the C language or C++, Java, .NET. So at least you will be able to use variables and if and else loops, and you can have try catch blocks for the error handling and everything. Okay, try catch blocks, right? And a lot of other things are available. So when you compare, T SQL is the completely programming unit. You can compare with the C language. So if you learn Java, all these things you're going to be learning: variables, if and else, loops, Arrays and pointer arrays are there, but pointers are not there in the C language. Clear? C has only one negative point, that is it has a pointers. Because of the pointers topic, C language has becoming very, 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 very complex. So to overcome that, there is a new language created, Java. Inside Java, you don't have any pointers. Clear? So people who are learning Java language, they first say that we don't have pointers in Java. So that is the first one. When the faculty say, people who already experienced in C language, they'll say, so since we don't have pointers, then Java is definitely a beautiful and easiest language. Definitely. So a lot of things are complex in C language. That is not at all there in your Java. Java has variables, if and else loops, any programming. When you learn, the first thing you will be able to understand a variable. Clear? And all these things. So Oracle has again variables, if and else loops, try catch blocks, like that. There are a lot of programming stuff that you need to learn. So later, what we do, we include SQL plus a T-SQL, and we write lot of programs. We use this plus this, okay? And using this, we're going to be writing lot of coding. So the coding that we're going to be writing is stored procedures. Clear? So if you wanted to know stored procedures, in the stored procedures, we use what? We use SQL plus a T-SQL, and we use user defined functions, right? We use user defined functions, we use triggers. Clear? If you wanted to learn user, store procedures, user defined functions and triggers, then definitely you should know SQL. SQL already we know. What is that? Create a table, drop a table, create a database, creating a query. All these comes under as part of SQL only. But if you wanted to learn advanced concept like store procedures, user defined functions, these are called UDFs, right? If you wanted to learn, definitely you should know programming. Which programming I'm talking about? So T-SQL programming. So with the help of that, you are going to be achieving or writing stored procedures, user defined functions, and triggers. Clear? So the next topic for us is stored procedures. And why stored procedures? Already we had learned. So in earlier class, so stored procedures are views and user defined functions. All these are there to centralize your code. So that was the topic, right? So we were talking about, when you open a database, you will see a tables. What is the purpose of a table? Centralize your data, right? So company's data is going to be centralized where? In the tables. But how the code is going to be centralized? To centralize your code, either we can create a view, right? Or you can go in for a stored procedure, or we can go in for a user defined function. Okay, so UDFs. So these are the things that are available to centralize your code. Clear? So for the code centralization, we are talking about these. For data centralization, we are going to be using only one concept, that is what is called, so that is what is called tables. Clear? When you open a database, you will be able to find out three. One is called table and views, and you have a programmability, stored procedures and functions, right? So stored procedure, functions, and views. These are the three things that you have to centralize your code. Clear? To centralize your data, you have tables. The previous videos you must watch. That video is called T-SQL programming, right? So I think I had already taken few concepts, so that you must study. Okay, people. Yeah. So today we have completed already client server architecture and views is completed. Now after that, today we are learning. We are learning what? So T-SQL programming. Why? Because after views, I need to start with a stored procedure, but stored procedure needs programming. Stored procedure needs and user-defined function needs programming. Triggers is not to centralize your code, it is there, but the purpose of trigger is there to perform the complex data validations. Clear? So what is the purpose of a trigger? We'll see. What is the purpose of a stored procedure? We'll see. What is the purpose of user-defined function? What is the purpose of a view? Somebody ask you purpose of a view, purpose of a stored procedure, purpose of a user-defined function. You can tell them that to centralize your code. This is the first point. Why are we centralizing? If you centralizing, the advantage is reusability of the code. So when you create a code and call multiple times, create once, call multiple times. That is what is called reusability. And you can apply a security on these topics. Okay. So views can be applied a security feature. Stored procedure is a beautiful concept where you can apply security. User defined functions also you can apply security. So code reusability, code centralization, see these are the common features so that we had. Clear? So we are going to learn already views. I think we discussed for 2 to 3 days, right? 2 days we have discussed, and I have uploaded the videos. People who missed it, because after SQL, so now I started a series of T-SQL, transact SQL. If you wanted to learn transact SQL, at least the introduction that you should know. And today I'm going to be starting with this concept. Why are we learning programming? Because if you learn programming, then only you will be able to write store procedures, user defined functions. Views does not need any kind of a programming. With the help of SQL language itself, you should be able to create a view. View does not need T-SQL programming. Clear? But there is a feature called store procedure, UDF needs, and triggers is one more miscellaneous concept or extra concept. So this concept is implemented within SQL and T-SQL with the for the data validations purpose. Okay, so that's what. So triggers is going to be a separate topic, but views, stored procedures, UDFs, you should know already we completed this, right? So we are going to learn as store procedure and this one. To do that, you need to know a little bit of programming. When you learn Oracle, people would ask you, do you know SQL and PLSQL? So PLSQL stands for Procedural Language SQL. Again, you're going to be learning only this stuff here. That's it, nothing else. If you learn SQL Server, people would ask you, do you know SQL? Do you know T-SQL? If you learn Oracle, people would ask you, do you know SQL? Do you know PLSQL? Or people will ask you, do you know PLSQL? That means, do you know Oracle? People may ask you, do you know T-SQL? That means, do you know SQL Server? So all these are uh, the things that you're going to be knowing clearly. Am I clear? So programming is very, very easy, guys. People who say, sir, I'm not able to write stored procedures. That means they're weak in programming. They're weak in here. Okay. If they're weak here, I strongly recommend them to watch this first, this concept. Okay, you spend 1 month of time, that's it. If you're having 1 month of time, daily 1 hour, if you know C language basics, then writing this is a very, 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 very simple, not at all complex. C is a ocean language. So from that, you take a bucket of water, that is a T-SQL programming. Clear? T-SQL is very, very smallest, finest, easiest programming language. Only it is going to work with the RDBMS. Clear? So if you say that you're weak in programming, so never say that you're weak in programming. You never studied C language. Because of that, you say you're very, very weak in programming. And I'm telling you, programming is very, very simple. Programming is very, very simple. Anybody can learn. Anybody can learn in this world. Clear? So any guys can learn. The problem is you should have proper teachers. That's it. If you have proper channels and proper teachers, and this is not at all a complex language. I taught C language, and even I taught pointers to a mechanical guys, people who are coming from organic chemistry, right? People who are coming from non-IT background. I taught them pointers, and it was very complicated topic. Nobody can teach pointers very easily. But I used to teach C language and pointers 20 years back, and I used to get a lot of appreciation. And I used to make it very simple. Many mechanical guys, and we had a given training to BITS Pilani guys, IITs, and in India, and we had a lot of training I used to give in Infosys campus Mysore. So 2006 and 2007, we were giving a lot of complicated training to those guys. But end of the day, you should have a good teacher so that you can understand. But even though teacher is not there today, you have YouTube. At least go through and try to learn few concepts. Only this pointer structures, arrays, pointers, all these things are not at all needed to understand programming. The basics you learn completely, so that you never say tomorrow, sir, stored procedure is very complicated programming. Stored procedure is very simple one, but the problem is you guys are coming from directly jumping to this. When you jump, even though I teach nicely, but you will not be able to understand many things because you are not coming from this background. Clear? So never think that programming is very complex, which is very easy, guys. Clear? So let us learn. So these are the things we're going to be learning as part of T-SQL programming. So the first concept is variables. As soon as you start AC programming, the faculty will teach you what is a variable. So that is the first concept in anywhere. If you learn Java, the first topic is let us understand variables. The next topic in Java, understand data types. Already we had seen data types in SQL, right? So the next concept is data types in C language or in Java or in C++ or in .NET. So the next language would be how to use if and else, how to use loops, how to use printing functions. That's it. If you learn very basics, and you're going to be using SQL plus a T-SQL and create complex stored procedures plus user defined functions. That's it. Okay. So learning this is very simple. The problem comes when you use SQL and SQL, people will get confused. Okay. But I'll make it very simple, and we use loop and print and everything. And so temp tables and table variables, these are two more topics that I wanted to cover as part of this. And the T-SQL programming only this, not these two concepts. These are extra miscellaneous topics that I wanted to cover. Okay, so extra miscellaneous topics that I wanted to cover. So this is not going to come under this. Programming means only this kind of stuff, very basic stuff that T-SQL has. Clear, guys? So what is a variable? So it has two types of variables in SQL Server. One is called local variable or called user defined variables. Then second variable is called global variables. These are called system defined variables. Now the first question, what is a variable? Right? Let us understand. Purpose of a variable, or what is a variable? To store the data and move the data from one place to another, we are going to use variables, right? So for example, you have to write a C program, right? C program doesn't have any table. SQL Server has a table, but C language cannot store data. Day one, I told you, right? But how do you give? How do you give? Programming means you should know some basic stuff, guys. Let me understand. Programming means what? I will explain. Programming means you're processing something. Now tell me, what is that you're going to be processing? So I think I would have told you. So what IT industry is doing, do you know? So what Google is doing, what Microsoft is doing, what IBM is doing, any IT industry, what is that they're doing? They are working for two things. Okay, IT means what? IT means information technology. That means what? They have only two things to process. One is that IT industry has a data. IT industry is going to be taking the company's data, and IT industry is going to process the data, the nothing else. Any IT industry to get, they are working for only two things: data and process. So this side we have a database management system. Then after that, people have RDBMS. Then today, people are talking about big data, and people are talking about before big data, data warehousing, and now after big data, people are talking about SQL Azure. Okay, so all these technologies are going to be talking about how to store data, right? So you have database management system, RDBMS, data warehousing, big data, Hadoop, Azure, and you have AWS, Azure, Amazon Web Services. All the technologies are going to store the data, right? You have a glass, you have a bucket, you have a reservoir, you have a tank, right? So all these things are going to preserve water, right? So like that, you have database management system, relational database management system, data warehousing system, big data, Hadoop system, Azure, AWS. All these things can store the data. For the processing purpose, we had a language called C, then we had C++, right? So then we have SAP, lot of applications, and we have Java, then we have Android, right? Then we have a .NET, right? So now we are learning Python, right? And we are learning Angular JS. So all these things to process your data. So language does not have, language always needs a data to process. That's it. So any IT industry is working for only two places, one or two things. One is called, either you need to work for a data or you need to work for a process. If you're coming, towards these technologies, we are learning all these things. If you jump onto this, you will be learning these technologies. So again, you cannot work independently. You need to work with the data. Again, I cannot work independently. I am, creating a data, centralizing data to give it to these people only, right? So you cannot say database is different and Android, .NET, Java is different. So it is not different. It is for the single company. You take a company, let us say Amazon.com, or you take a company called Netflix.com, right? So that is a company, right? So Netflix.com is a company. So what is that these people are going to be doing? So these people, having a lot of business all over the world. People can see, OTT platform, right? Netflix. So you can subscribe, you can watch movies, lot of things. What will happen? Your data is going to be preserved in one of the place here, either Azure, AWS, big data, data warehousing, RDBM, or somewhere. And when you go to netflix.com, that is where you're going to be making the payment. So the payment gateway would be Android application or iOS application, would be .NET application, could be Java application. So whenever you process some data, so the data is going to be captured either through iOS and Android or through Java or through SAP. All the data is going to come here, right? So end of the day, a company has two things. Netflix has a data and that need to process. And you have tomorrow you take Citibank. Citibank has what? Citibank has data. Somebody has to process it, right? For the processing purpose, we are going to use what is called as a language, and data storage purpose, we're going to be using a RDBMS. Clear? So now programming, when you write, for example, you write a C programming. So you are going to be storing data, right? Or you're going to be processing data. But where is the data for C language? C language does not have any data. C++ does not have any data. SAP does not have any data. But where is the data? Data is here. End of the day, C language has to go. But how the C language is going to get? So there is a concept called variables. Clear? So variables means to store data in a programming. Clear? Remember this. But in RDBMS, how do you store the data? We are going to be storing the data in tables, right? But C doesn't have any table. C++ doesn't have any table. C, any programming language is not going to store the data, but I wanted to store the data programmatically in a language. So we are going to use a variable only, nothing else. Okay. You cannot create a table inside a C language and store the data. C language will take the data from RDBMS and is going to be reading. But if I wanted to read the data, first I should be able to hold, right? For example, you are giving me a lot of items, but I should be able to have a storage to, you keep that, right? If I have a big home, I can have it. But if I don't have anything, if you supply a lot of items to me, how do I keep it? So C does not have any storage. That's what I discussed. C++ does not have any storage. SAP does not have any storage. But how will they store the data to process it? They are going to use what is called as a variable. Okay. So where they are going to be storing the data. For example, in SQL, what we do? So in SQL, we create a table, right? So for example, this is my table. So you need to understand the difference, how a language is going to work, how database is going to work. End of the day, both of them are going to work together. So this is your employee table, right? So you can store unlimited data in tables very, very easily. 101, let us say John salary is $10,000. 102, Simran or Simret is $20,000. Like that, we can store the unlimited data where in SQL or in RDBMS or in tables. But if you know to C language or C++, the first thing you should know, C language cannot store data. So if you say, hey, C language, take this data, C language, no, C language will say, no, 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 I cannot take it. Sorry. That is the first thing. But what C language will have? C language has a variable. What is the variable? To store the data. Okay. Data coming from where? Coming from anywhere. Coming from anywhere. C, C++, Java, .NET, Python, Angular. They don't have data storage. So they can keep the data in a variable. So what is a variable and where the variable will get created? That you should know, right? So variables are going to be created not in hard disk. All variables are created in your RAM. RAM means what? Memory. Remember this. Clear? So programming does not store anything in your hard disk. Remember this. So C, C++, SAP, Java, .NET, all these things will access only one thing. So RAM. Okay. They don't work with hard disk. But what about your data? For example, I create a database and I'm storing this data. So I have a lot of tables here, right? If I go to a iBank database, there is a table. Where is the data? All this data, where is this account master table when we say, and we are talking about, I have my data in this table. Where is this data stored? Is it in RAM or hard disk? If you say RAM, then your interview is gone, because RAM is not permanent, right? It is temporary. So you store data today, after 100 years when you come, the data is available. That means where is the stable data stored? It is there in the hard disk. Clear? So RDBMS technologies are going to use what is called a disk. Disk means what? Hard disk. But any languages, all these are going to be using a, they're going to be using a RAM. They never go to any hard disk and get something, or they cannot store. Already we discussed. Any language does not go to hard disk and do something, but your RDBMS, big data, Azure, AWS, all these things, data warehousing, all these things are going to be storing the data. But where? In the disk. Disk means hard disk. But your programming we're talking about, programming means C, C++, they are not going to store data anywhere. They simply get the data from somewhere. They're going to be processing it. So they are going to be using RAM only. So variables are going to be declared inside the RAM. Variable is not a disk-based technology, which is a RAM-based technology. So if you wanted to process something, you need to keep the data inside your RAM, inside your memory. For example, this is how a SQL server will say, this is my data, but I cannot supply this data as it is to my programming, right? So if I wanted to store this data to C language or to any other language, I cannot have this data. I need to create lot of variables. So how many variables I create? One, two, three. I need to create variable number one, variable number two, variable number three, and these variable is a memory space. Clear? So what is a variable? Variable is memory space. So this is a syntax to create a variable. Clear? So we're talking about local variables. Now when you learn any programming, so programming does not store data, it is going to be using a variable to store the data. So let us talk about a local variable. Purpose of the variable, I told you, to store the data. Where? Data in where? In the RAM. And move the data from one place to another. Variables are declared in the memory RAM, but not in SQL Server or hard disk. Remember, if you learn C language, SQL, anywhere, variables means RAM, RAM means variables. Clear? So in SQL, there are two types of variables in SQL. Even in C, C++, there are different varieties of variables. Clear? So these are created using at the rate symbol in SQL, removed when the connection is closed. However, whoever is created them, they can only use it, but not others. These are local variables. How to create a variable? So in SQL Server, syntax to create a local variable is, you need to use declare at the rate symbol and variable name and the data type. So this is a syntax you have to use to create a variable. So now if I wanted to create a variable, why a variable? Because to store data, we use a table. But how do you supply this data to this fellow? Because this fellow cannot take the data and process. You need to give the data via a variable only. Clear? All the data has to come to the language via variables only. So you should know how to use a variable. Now what I do, I'm going to be creating a variable. The first thing, so we'll say declare a variable. Declare means we are creating a variable. Declare a variable. We are going to be writing a programming, right? So variable. So what is the syntax? Declare at the rate x is integer. Okay, declare at the rate x integer. So this is how we are going to be creating a variable in SQL. Clear? So declare at the rate salary integer. What is the meaning? So salary is a variable which is capable of storing an integer. That is the meaning. So what is the meaning of this? The meaning is at the rate x is what? Is a variable. Is a variable. Variable means the data can change. Vary means what? The data can change. That is the meaning. At the rate x is a variable which is capable of storing an integer. So that means what? When you declare this one, so where the variable is going to be creating, variable is going to go to RAM. This is your RAM. Clear? So this is your RAM. And SQL Server is going to creating a block of memory. This is the storage where inside your RAM. What is the name of the variable? The name is at the rate x. So this is what is called will get created, and you can store some data if you wanted to store some data here. Clear? For example, this I have created. Now I wanted to store some data. So to store the data, we'll say set at the rate x is equivalent to 10. So this is how we are going to be declaring the data. We are putting the data into variable. That 10 is going to come here. Clear? So this value will be used by your C language or your Java language, or tomorrow it is going to be used by your T-SQL programming. Clear? So a programming will access the data from where? From a variable, because It is not going to get the data. This is your disk. Okay, hard disk. Hard disk is going to be having a bigger table. So all the data from the table, you cannot directly give it to C language. C language cannot take it. C language always take the data from where? So table data has to go to where? A variable. A variable can access by the language. Clear? For example, as we know, this is one row, this is one cell data, this is one more cell data, this is one more cell data. You need to keep three variables and bring the data here, bring the data here, and bring the data here. So that is how. And one row is over. Then you erase, then you take the second row data, then you put in. Then you erase and go for the third row data. So this is how the variables are getting the data. Variable is not going to store all the data. It is only one integer can be stored, or one names can be stored, or one salary can be stored, not all the column data. For example, we create a table, data is like this, right? So you have a lot of data in this column, lot of data in this column. All the data you cannot give it at a stretch at a time to the variable. Variable can store a single data. So see the difference between a how a SQL is going to be processing your data, how the a programming is going to be processing your data. There is a big change, drastic change that you can accept. Clear? So if you have a table, the table data, you have millions of data, millions of rows, you cannot send it directly. If you wanted to send, create one variable, one more variable for this, one more, three variables you create here, right? And store this data here, this data here, and this data here. And you supply to C language. Now, once data is over, next you go to the second row data will go. Next you go to the third row data will go. So that is how a programming is processing the data, a row by row, a cell by cell. So a drastic change from how the data is getting processed and how the data is being stored. Clear? You cannot give all the data directly to the any programming. So any language can take the data from where? Take the data from you know rams variables only. Did you understand this clearly? So that is how you need to start thinking about the programming. Clear? So because your programming tomorrow we are going to be using a procedure, right? Procedure, when you declare a variable, we need to supply. We need to supply what? Because procedure is a programming, we need to create a variable. So we need to create a variable and supply the data. So that's what I told you. So if you have this much of a data, so what we do? If you wanted to create a program, definitely you need to create three variables. The first variable is called, for example, this is employee ID, right? It is integer. Let us say it is a varchar column, varchar 100. It is a money column, right? So everything will have a data type. Now you are going to be creating three things, right? So this is how you're going to be storing the data. So what is X? X is a variable which is capable of storing an integer, only one value. So one value is stored. Can I give one more value? Why not? Set at the rate X equals to 20. What will happen? That time you had 10, the 10 will get replaced. So you had already, this is your X. Where is X? X in the RAM. So you had already 10. This 10 will get erased, then 20 will get placed. Clear? So that is the meaning of this. So because as we know, it can store, a variable can store only single value. Clear? Variable is not your table, right? So table can have millions of data. So the purpose of table is store the data, but the purpose of variable is not to store the data. You need to store one value that you are going to be giving it to a processor, right? So end of the day, how the things. So this is what is your disk, and this is what is your RAM, and this is what is called your processor. This is your processor, and this is what is called your RAM, and this is what is called your disk, right? You will get the data from the disk to RAM. So how? In the form of variables. Remember this. You create always a variables and store the data, and these variables data will be accessed by the processor. It is going to be processing it. It will take the data from here, It will take the data from here and is going to be processing. Processor has a lot of registers. So here we have a variable, right, to store the data. So here you have what is called a register. So you get the data from here, you're going to be dumping and processing. For example, there is a pizza. So where is the pizza available? Pizza is available in a plate. So plate you assume as a disk, right? From the plate, where it is going to go? It is going to go to my hand. So that is a temporarily it is there in the RAM, right? So it will come to my, I take a piece of pizza. So you cannot get complete 1 million data to your RAM, right? You cannot take complete pizza at a time. What you do? You take a small, this is your pizza, you take a piece of that pizza so to your hand, that is your RAM, and you keep that in your mouth. Okay, your mouth also should hold the pizza, otherwise how the things will get done there. So definitely your mouth is going to be cut processing the piece of pizza into small chunks, and it is going to be putting into your stomach, right? So there is a plate in the pizza, and the pizza you're going to be taking into your hands. From there again you're going to be putting the pizza. So your mouth should has a storage to hold the pizza and processing, right? So RAM is something, and the processor is going to be having what is called as a register. So these registers are going to be holding your pizza and giving the pizza to the teeth. Teeth is going to be bite, it is going to bite the pizza and cuts into pieces, and you have a lot of taste buds and everything with, so that you can enjoy the taste and everything. Then digestion is going to start. Clear? So you have a big pizza in the plate, then you have a hand that you're going to be using and to put that into your processor, where again you're storing the pizza and processing it. So processor also holds the data in the form of where registers. Okay, this is what is called a register. Clear? So how the RAM is going to be holding your data in the form of a variable, right? So how the disk is going to be storing the data, either in a table or your data may be in a file. That's it. Okay, so Azure data, AWS data, any data, either that will be there in a table or the data may be in a file. That's it, nothing. So this is a permanent storage. So RAM is going to be having variables, and this data from variable is going to go to where processor. Processor is going to be processing the data. For example, if I create a variable X, okay, variable X, I'm giving 10. If I create one more variable called y and I'm storing 20. So I have two variables, a variable x and a variable y. And these are 10 and 20 I have. But I wanted to process 10 plus 20. So that processing will be done by the processor only. And it is going to be giving. So what will happen? This 10 will go to this register. This 20 will go to this register, right? It will have a lot of registers, not only one. It will have a lot of registers. The 10 will go here, the 20 will go here. The is processor means a circuit is going to be taking 10 and it is going to be adding plus, and it's going to be getting 20. 10 plus 20, 30. 30 is going to be going into one more register. Okay, from here, this will again go back to RAM. So from register, it is going to be storing in the variable. Okay, so this is what is called a variable. It is going to hold. And if you wanted to print something, you can hold it. But I wanted to store this and take this and store somewhere permanently. Clear? If you wanted to store, you create a table or you create a file. So this is how the things would happen. So you give the data, either directly give the data 10 and 20, you're giving directly here. You're not getting from where? Table. Directly you supply from here and it will go, it will process. So RAM and this one. So RAM to processor, processor to RAM, you're not going to store anywhere. If you wanted to store somewhere, either you can use a table or a file. So here we have a tables. In this we have variables. In this we have registers. Clear? So the processing is going to be happening always where in your processor. So all these things will be handled by one guy. The guy name is called operating system. So, since you're not coming from IT industry, all these things you don't know. Clear? Your operating system is going to be handling your disk. Your operating system know that there is a variable. Your operating system know that the processor is doing something. On top of your operating system, you may have a Java, you may have SQL server, you may have X application, Y application. So, for example, we're talking about Java or we're talking about SQL server here. So SQL server cannot go directly. SQL will ask, hey, operating system, I have this variable, I have this data. Operating system will say, okay, your data, I'll put it in a disk. You're creating a variable. I create them in this one. And you're saying you wanted to process, right? So this will get assigned. So this is going to be processing and it will going to be dumping into where a variable. Clear? So like that, operating system is one point of contact for all other applications. So SQL, Java, .NET, they directly will not go to very RAM and hard disk. So they give work to operating system. Operating system will do get the data from disk and put it here and dump it here, get back, then again operating system will give the data back to the SQL or to Java, .NET. So these people are going to be printing into the screen. Clear? So internally, lot of people are doing. For example, you have mother is there. Now tell me, without a mother, can you do anything? I have a big almara, big, things are available, cupboards are available. So somebody has to go there and put it right. So who's that one is going to be doing? Mother. So mother is the operating system. That's what, right? So you give some, a stuff. Mother is going to be taking, and she is going to put everything into the cupboards. Clear? And you wanted to get it back again. Mother is going to go and get the data from the cupboards. The mother is operating system. So there is centralized software which is going to run. So the mother is going to be accessing hard disk and the RAM and the processor. So this is what that you should know. Clear? SQL, Java, .NET cannot work independently. They have to give. For example, I'm the son. I'm going to be getting some items from outside. What I do, I directly will not have access to cupboards. I'll give it to my mother, right? My mother has a cupboard and everything, the keys and everything. She will open and she'll keep the saman there, the items over there, right? So whenever I get it back again, I'll ask the mother, mother, I need that cash. Mother, I need a fruit. Mother, I need a food. Mother, I need a water. So mother is going to go and get the water for you, and mother is a, will give something. So there is an operating system that is going to be accessing the disk and the variable and the processor. So on top of the operating system only, all the applications are going to run. Clear? So tables and files are going to be there in the hard disk permanently. And if somebody says a variable, variables are always in the RAM, and from the data from the variable is going to go to processor. Processor is storing the data in the form of a registers. Clear? So we never create a registers, but we create a variables or we create a tables. Clear? So that is how you need to understand always. If you wanted to understand the programming, so always, so we cannot give a table directly to the C or directly to a T SQL programming. Programming cannot access that. That table data should go to where? A variable. From variable, it has to go to go to the processor to process it. Clear, guys? So hope it makes some sense, right? So now we are talking about a variable. So first you should know how to declare a variable. So this variable gets created where? In hard disk. Even though I'm in ibank database, you should not think that it is going to go to ibank database. No, it is going to go where? It is going to go to RAM, memory. Clear? So what is the space it is going to be occupying? Because there has to be space, right? So x is an integer. Integer is going to be taking 4 bytes. Clear? So x is a variable which is capable of storing an integer. So the X size is 4 bytes. If I say tiny int, it is 1 byte. If I say small int, clear? So this is how it is going to be there. Now, if you wanted to store the data, you need to say set at the rate X is equivalent to what? Minus, say, minus 10. So you can have positive number, negative number, anything. If you wanted to read the data, because when you store, you're going to be reading, right? So this is for the storing purpose. That's it. If you know these three things, that is more than sufficient for you. So read means you are going to be using a function called print. Print at the rate X. Now let me execute it. That's it. So it is going to be printing a 5. This is programmatically. You're printing the data from where? From the RAM. Clear? But when I say select star from account master, where is the data? This data is going to go, it is available in the disk, from disk to the ram to your storage. Okay, so always data has to come to ram, then only the display can happen. So all the data you're reading from the disk. So what will happen? So you have a pizza. If you wanted to show the pizza, what you do? Because pizza is having very big pizza, you cannot have it. You get a piece by piece, and you're going to be displaying. So you cannot get all the data at a time. So what will happen? A piece by piece or a page by page data will get loaded to the RAM. So that in a fraction of milliseconds, it is going to be loading and into the RAM, and it is going to be displaying to the external people. So this data is coming from where? Data is coming from hard disk to the RAM, and from the RAM, the display can start. Clear? So this is already there in the RAM, so it need not go to any hard disk because the data is available where? The data is available. So in a variable. Clear? So that's what you need to understand. You can execute. So X value, for example, I say set at the rate X value is equivalent to 2000. So what will happen? First minus 1000 will go. Now 2000 will go. Now you're going to be having the last value. Now you cannot see the first value. If you wanted to see the first value, you read at in this place. Okay. And after that, again, you store one more data, and you should be able to get like this. So you create only one variable, you're putting minus 1000 reading, and again replacing 2000 and reading. You will be able to see twice like this. It does not mean that a variable is having two things. Variable is having two values. No, it is having only one value. So these are the small things that you should understand. Clear? So these are the things you need to understand. So that's what is very, very important. Clear, guys? So clear. So this is what. Now, one more thing you should know. You cannot execute one by one. For example, I execute this first. It is got executed. Now I execute this later. It will not execute. Why? Because inside the ram is very, very costly resource, right? So as soon as you create something here, for example, you created a variable called at the rate x, right? At the rate x gets created, and you did not store anything inside the ram. It is got created. Now as soon as the execution is over, so this will be removed automatically. Who's going to be removing? Operating system remove. Okay, so no variables is permanent. It is there during the execution time only. After that it will not be there. So you cannot say I will declare a variable, after some time I'll go and put the data. It is not going to work at all. So everything has to happen at once only. Once. Okay, so it is declaring the variable, putting the data, and displaying. Once the last statement is executed, the variable it was there. For example, you may putting minus 1000, immediately you put 2000, it will print, then immediately this is removed automatically. So there is no drop. or delete. Okay, there is no drop or delete, so automatically the variables are removed from the RAM by operating system, so you cannot execute one by one also. That is also nothing will work. You cannot execute like this. It will give you all errors. Clear? So all the, if you have 1,000 lines of code also, you need to execute at one shot. Clear? So it will give you like that, because everything is there in the RAM. Declare means RAM. Create means where? Create means hard disk. Remember these points. Creating means everything is going to go to the hard disk. Declaring means everything is going to go to the RAM. Clear? So RAM is going to be having this value. If you wanted to send this data, so I told you, you create three variables. So how do you create a variable? Declare at the rate employee ID and integer. So this is how you can, because we know this is integer, one variable that you're going to be declaring like this. One more variable, declare at the rate name. It is varchar 100. Clear? Because the size is here. So like that, whatever be this, data types here, the same data types are going to be there. Declare at the rate salary, or you can give any naming convention. So which is a money. Now what will happen? It is going to create three blocks. Okay. So you can read the data and put this one value here. Okay. Now you can read this data, one more value will go. You can keep the data and this value can go here. Okay, so like that you create three variables, and this is one variable, this is one more variable, this is one more variable. All these variables are inside where? In your RAM. Clear? So if you wanted to get SQL data, so this is your SQL table. SQL means, I told you, which is a disk, a hard disk. So all the data will get added to your RAM, and from here you're going to be giving to your processor. Okay, now what will happen? So this row is gone here. This row is gone. So this row is going to be processing whatever you wanted to process. Then the next row will go here. 102. Then this data is going to come here. Then this data is going to come here. Clear? So this is the next row is going to come. Now you cannot say, if you have 1 million data, you should not say that I will create 1 million. No, you create only number of columns, only one set. You're going to be supplying a row by row, and the processor is going to be getting this. Clear? So this is what is a permanent storage, and this is what is RAM, and this is how you're going to be supplying the data to your language. Clear? So tomorrow, if you wanted to do programmatically something, means you put the data into where? Into the RAM. Clear? So, and you always take a row by row, row by row, row by row, row by row. When you're taking this row, so how do you read the data? I'll tell you. How to declare, we knew, but how to give this data, that will tell. But you should always know a row by row only will go. If you have a 1 million data, these three variables slowly will take the data, and it is a separate box. This is a separate box. This is separate box. So it will go to line by line, line by line, and it's going to be processing the data. Clear? So that is how you are going to understand. So how the variables are going to be holding your data, how the data in a permanent table is going to be stored. So everything we're going to understand. Now we process. Now process data again can come back here, right? You can also store some data here, and if you wanted to keep it, you can keep it. Otherwise, you simply display onto the screen. This is your computer. It is going to be displayed onto the screen, so this will not get stored anywhere. Okay, that's it. So the processor is going to display something, and you shut down the computer. Clear? If that is the case, you can display in the variable, and you close the computer and go. Clear, guys? So if you know these three things, then writing a programming is very, very easy, very, very simple. It is not at all complex. How a program, a C, C++, Java, dotted, how they are going to be accessing your data? Always through variable. because C cannot go to a table directly, C++ cannot go to table directly, Java cannot go to table directly, Android, .NET, Python, nobody can go to table directly. Always these people are going to be having a variable, and you need to supply the data to a variable, and through variable it is going to be taking the data. So that is how you need to understand. Clear, guys? So any other questions? So this is the introduction to variables. The first concept that we had seen today, how to create a local variable, and tomorrow we'll work with some more concepts. Okay. So when you know the programming, you can easily write what? A stored procedure. Okay. So you can easily write what? Stored procedure. Otherwise, you are not going to you cannot write, because SQL is something different. Stored procedure is means you need to know little bit of programming sense, right? How the program is going to work, that you should know. Guys, any questions?